Brian, can you hear us okay?
I can hear you.
All right, we
I
can hear you too.
fine.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Raymore City Council work session for Monday, May the 20th, 2024. We have the one item on this evening's agenda, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, sir. As you've heard me describe meetings like this before, a little bit of a multimedia presentation tonight on several different road items that will culminate in some recommendations that we have due to the lack of passage of the use tax. But I'm going to have Mr. Crass and Mr. Salisbury start off with talking about some of the issues concerning our local roads. So turn it over to you all.
I'm going to turn it over to Trent to go over the report that he did. Does council have a copy of it, sir?
I'm handing it out now. Thanks, sir. I'm going to send it to him later. And Councilmember Mills, I'll be sending these materials to you immediately after the meeting.
Thank you, sir.
I'm good. We good? All right. So yeah, last Wednesday we went out and we took cores on 5 different roads, 2 that have issues that you can see from the surface, and then 2 that are new roads that have no issues, and then 1 just out of curiosity. So I'll kind of start with some background and then go through the different roads. So when a subdivision's built, they install the utilities, and then we do subgrade treatment. It used to be fly ash, and now they do cement treatment. They're all about the same though. Then after that, we do a roll test, and basically a roll test, they drive a dump truck on it, and if the subgrade moves, then it fails. If it doesn't, and it's good. And then when they're placing the asphalt, they do it in lifts, and we monitor them throughout the process. And all the roads that were tested, I guess except for Overlook, I have no idea. All of the roads that were tested passed the initial inspection. So we started on Branchwood and then went to Bridgeshire, Lake Crest, Buffalo Grass, and then Overlook. And all of them that fall under our current standards met or exceeded, for the most part, our standard of 8 inches of asphalt. So like Bridgeshire, I know there's some trench settlements out there. It is 10 inches asphalt. So we definitely don't think it was the asphalt causing the issue out there.
Which one is that?
Sorry,
You need
that's
to-
this one, yes. So Bridgeshire is this one. So they're in Branchwood, Bridgeshire, Lake Crest, Buffalo Grass, and then Overlook. One that we did find a lot of issues with was Lakeshore, and Lake Crest?
Lake Crest.
I wrote Lakeshore. Lake Crest, excuse me. So most of them, when you stuck the probe rod in the ground, it would just bow it. It wouldn't go in the ground at all. On Lake Crest, it actually sunk to the handle about 4 feet deep, give or take. And that's not obviously not a good thing. And so we took a soil sample, and I can pass it around. But the
That's-
soil,
Trent, that's actually the picture that you see on the third page, which is 1304 Lake
Oh,
Crest
yes.
Circle there. And you can see how tall the probe is on the page in front of that one, and it just went all the way down. So clearly, there's nothing underneath there holding the road up.
do you want me to pass this around? Sure. Okay. So yeah, and let me put a good one with it for comparison. So that one would be what we would expect to see versus what's in the first cup. It looks a lot more like clay. And again, it passed the roll test, so we're not exactly sure what happened out there. But we're working with Geotechnologies currently to get a plan to do some soil boring and come up with a plan to fix that one. The other one that obviously has issues is Bridgeshire that we tested, and this core came from right in the middle of one of the settlements. And the subgrade under it looked normal. Obviously, there's enough asphalt. So we think what's happening out there is settlements across the sewer, what are they called? Sewer services, yeah. And so currently we use an aggregate backfill on those kind of trenches, and we're proposing to switch to a flowable fill backfill on those because the flowable fill will not settle, and that should alleviate the issues moving forward.
And the council may remember it is Bridgeshire that was brought up last Monday night by one of our residents as being bad, that it's flowing. And the reason it's flowing is the utilities on that street are cross utilities rather than down the side of the street. So I've actually given the okay to go ahead and add to our specifications for roads this flowable fill to be put in going forward. That is obviously going to be an additional cost to the developers. So one of the reasons we wanted to alert you ahead of time is if you get a call from a developer being upset that has to go in, it can be their cost of installation or a greater cost to the taxpayers later when we're having to go in on something. Mr. Salisbury is tolerably confident that in the case of Bridgeshire, when we go in there and make the repairs, the settlement has already occurred there, so we won't have to go back in and put the flowable fill in. The damage is already done. We're just gonna have to fix the road. Lake Crest, on the other hand, the entirety of that, because we have no idea what's going on underneath there, Lake Crest may take a little bit of time. And when we do go in, if it's a water issue or whatever, the residents that live there may have to suffer for quite some time with not having direct access to their driveways. Thank you, sir.
Anybody have any questions? Anybody have any questions? Mr. Barber?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the detailed report. This flowable fill, is that like the mud jacking? Is it?
It's different than that. So it's very, very similar to concrete, but they don't, sorry. It's very similar to concrete, but they don't have to rake it, level it, anything like that. It kind of just flows into the trench and self-leveling, and there's no compaction required.
And one of my takeaways from all of this is when we look at the actual asphalt that's being poured in 4 of these cases, that they are meeting or exceeding our specifications for the number of inches of asphalt that have to be in there. The aggregate that's being used in the asphalt is fine, but everything points to what's underneath that asphalt. And interestingly enough, Trent, if you could hold up. So this is, what street is this? Overlook is one of the better streets that we have in the city. That's the depth of the pour because it's sitting on rock. And it's been around for a long time. But we just kind of wanted to, I mean, you all hear about the residential streets and what did they do wrong? And so pick 2 that we knew we have a significant problem on. We've been able to identify that it's subgrade issues, not the pour of the asphalt that goes in, even when those subgrades are being tested when they go in. You can see the one that's the bad one that came around in the cup just seems, again, we're gonna have to do some exploration there because something obviously happened after it got tested. Could be water. If it's a water issue, and I'm one of the residents living there, I'm also concerned about other issues, of course, that are gonna go on if the street out in front of my house is that bad.
And we've tested our water lines there. It's not an issue. See the hydrant right there at that point.
No,
The lake
this
road
is, it's significant enough that it's likely groundwater issues
Okay.
saturating the subgrade.
Okay.
Any questions on part one? Terrific. Part two, want to talk with you all about what is going to be our recommendation as far as the Kentucky Road 58 Highway interchange. You remember we've been addressing this issue for a long time. Wilson got back to us with some recommendations, and so I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Krass.
Thank you. So what you have on the large boards is the two options that have been developed for the median at Kentucky. The first, which is on the boards over here, which is on the right, and the left board over there, that is what we have kind of always been envisioning. It would allow left turns to go northbound and southbound at Kentucky. The consultant is recommending that we do extend the median full width to prevent other left turn movements. The reason is they're finding through their modeling and traffic data that traffic left turns going south on Dean are starting to back up past Kentucky or into the Kentucky intersection on a regular basis. Their recommendation is the other drawing you see there, where it is a continuous median from Westgate all the way to Dean Avenue to completely eliminate the left turns. They feel fairly strongly that there is enough traffic out there backing up and conflicts that is their recommendation. So we're looking for some input from council. As I said, the original option that we'd been exploring was still allowing left turns. If council will recall, when we did the Westgate study that was presented to you with some 58 options and some other things, the traffic data then is virtually no one is using that driveway into China Star. And I'm sorry, not China Star, apologize, Panda Express and the Cadence property there on the south. On the north, I think it's probably the same situation with that driveway to the auto parts store. I'm sure no one is using that. They are that property there, the Valvoline and the auto parts store, are connected to both Clint with a traffic signal and Kentucky. And so I think our recommendation based on the data is to have the full median put in. Now, there is some quirky things there that we...
Continue.
Okay. We do have an agreement with Belton, and they are going to have some input, and maybe it ends up being that the compromise is we come back to the left turns. But I would also like to remind council that although we had agreements on the Westgate at the staff level, when their council ultimately approved a median design, we wound up with what we have there which really doesn't function the way we had intended. If there were complaints about folks bypassing that and driving the wrong way on Kentucky. So we do have some work to do to get this implemented. And that concludes my presentation, sir.
All right. Did you have anything else to add to that?
Yes, I do, sir. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right.
We recognize the sensitivity of completely cutting off Kentucky and completely cutting off the entrance into the retail area across the street. Again, we have been operating all along with this one that actually does have the left in, left out. As Mr. Krass is indicating, Wilson came back and they are actually saying the complete cutoff is their recommendation for this. But we would be open if, we're not set in stone on Wilson's recommendation. It would be the number one recommendation, but nothing lost if we do go ahead and allow some degree of access as far as left in, left out there is concerned. The one driveway that Mr. Krass is talking about that will be completely cut off with either of the scenarios is going to be this one here, which is Bill Ray Estate Track 5, but that's the Valvoline, and they do have two other entrance points that they can use to get into that particular location.
That's actually the auto parts place. Valvoline's this one.
I'm sorry, the auto parts place, right?
And really, they have a rear entrance, and you're still
Right.
gonna be able to enter that from
Kentucky.
westbound 58, right? You weren't gonna cut that off, were you?
No, no, not at
So
all.
westbound traffic will still be able to enter.
Right. And from Clint. Sir?
Yep, go ahead, Ms. Berg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the choice with the kind of strange pork chop parallelogram, whatever it is, I would be concerned with not having anything like, if it was just a raised median with nothing on top of it, like not any signs or not anything else. Because when we started out with the pork chop at Walmart, people just drove over the top of it all the time. And that's one of the reasons I kind of had any interest in local government originally, was that pork chop. They're gonna drive right over the top of this thing unless there are signs that hurt their vehicle. Like a sign that says, left turn sign, you know, or there's a median, one of those, and then another sign to block it, so people don't drive over the top of it.
So Mike, was that your suggestion on delineators?
Well, actually,
Along through
what they are proposing, where a normal curb is 6 inches, they are proposing that this median and the island be 8 inches tall. So you're gonna, if you attempt to cross it, you will likely get high centered, so. And I just want to clear, I do agree with Mr. Fearborn, although I think the safest recommendation is the full median. The allowing the turns will function. It's just we still have to keep in mind that traffic will back up past the cut in for the turn lanes, and so that's. But we are sensitive to the access and what we previously committed. Just want to point out that option still creates a conflict point.
We also think it might help us in our argument with Belton, because we do have to have their approval to do this.
Got some?
Yeah, thank you, sir. So having lived there for over 20 years and having driven that literally every day, the only time I've ever seen the 58 entrance into Advanced Auto Parts is from eastbound traffic. They pull in and they get into the turn lane and then wait sometimes for traffic to clear and go across. Never seen anybody in a westbound movement turn in there. Everybody comes in off of Kentucky to get in there. That's pretty commonplace. So I think your assessment is definitely correct on that. And you're correct, even with this, it's still gonna back up past Kentucky, but without the turn there, I think it's going to change behavior over a relatively short period of time. Most people that travel that route are gonna go to Westgate. It's the natural route. Right now, they do it because they can. It's still a shortcut, and if traffic's not bad, they'll get out there. And then we have some that play Frogger that come across and cross all 5 lanes going into the shopping center or exiting out as well. So pretty standard behavior over a long period of time.
Yes, sir. Mr. Baker?
A couple things. So when they did like the traffic pattern studies with the anticipation of Chick-fil-A going there and a left turn going into Chick-fil-A, potentially from the warehouses coming up Dean, going right, wouldn't that potentially like at lunchtime, maybe even back up out of that left turn lane onto 58 further back to the west if you have a massive amount of people trying to, I know they could go down to the light, which would be the best case scenario, but I'm just thinking with what's going in that particular intersection, if we still allow a left-hand turn in there, it's going to be a different traffic pattern going in there.
And Chick-fil-A is aware of this, and what Chick-fil-A was told is actually the more conservative without any kind of a left turn movement whatsoever. I spoke with Mr. Gress about that. They've arranged their internal traffic to deal with it.
And is any of this study like in conjunction with the Dean Avenue to 58 Highway median project and like those two working together? Because I know that's, you know, one of our most dangerous intersections, I think, is Dean and 58.
Yes, this is one part of the design. We asked them to prioritize this segment, knowing that Chick-fil-A was coming, and the Dean Avenue is kind of in preliminary stages. We've seen it, we're reviewing it. We're working on getting it into Walmart's hands for their reaction. Also want to address that the Chick-fil-A site plan is actually set up in the traffic patterns to access off of Westgate. And so if you're trying to come in off of Kentucky, you're going to be going against the traffic patterns and the traffic flow.
Mike, what's Belton planning for Clint Drive right now? I know they've talked about that being a project on their, are they just redoing it, resurfacing? Or?
They may just be redoing it. I'm not aware of any changes there, sir.
I know they had some curb issues along their side of 58 as well they were working on. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, Mr. Circo.
So I was trying to get to understand, we've talked about this before, so if we're going on 58 West, you could take a right, you'll get your Chick-fil-A, but on Kentucky, when you're going south, that's where a lot of problem, people want to take a left. I didn't know if we were going to put something in there so they can go right and go north from Kentucky only, no left turns when they're coming east on 58 because of that traffic flow. Because that's the problem we used to have when I was in insurance, a lot of people taking the left and having wrecks right there. So I didn't know if we were going to do something different on that or not. On Kentucky itself, going in when the Chick-fil-A's in. If you're going west, you can take a right, yeah.
South on Kentucky, you can't make a left.
Okay.
Either of these.
Okay, that's what I was saying. You can't take a left on South Kentucky.
Completely blocks it.
Okay.
And this one is.
Going south, you can't take a left on 58. Great, that's what I was wondering we were going to do.
You can't make a left out onto 58.
That's good. That's where the problem's at. The other day, we were going down there, I was coming down by scooters, and all of a sudden, a car in front of us in the second lane just slams the brakes to go in, take a left in traffic. I was the third of a 5-car almost pileup. We were slamming our brakes in because this one guy just stopped. He wanted to take a left going east on 58, and it just jammed everybody up. I didn't know if we're going to do something there where they can't do that either eventually. There at the scooters turn in.
Anybody else have any input? So what are you looking for tonight, Mike? Are you looking for an answer, or is it just something for us to consider?
I think what we're looking for is some direction, Mr. Fearborn, please correct me, but I think recognizing sensitivity and everything, I think we, for access to properties, and it's always a problem when you're changing access for existing properties, but my proposal, if council is agreeable, is to present the no access at all option to Belton with a fallback of allowing the left turns, if that's agreeable. Mr. Fearborn, do you have anything?
I think that accurately sums up your presentation.
Okay. Brian, did you have a question?
Well, more of a comment. I support that. How do I put it? I think the fallback needs to be a fallback. We don't jump to the fallback very quickly. We try to push our preferred option and not just quickly default to the fallback. It's only my comment.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Barber.
Yeah, I think that's a good plan, good strategy. What you're saying, though, is we could live with both of them. Just one is a little better than the other. Is that what I'm getting?
That's a correct
Yeah.
summation, sir.
So even the fallback is a doable situation if that, and we understand there's a part of this that we can't control, that we're gonna have to be potentially some kind of compromise.
And I think that is, and also what we were now calling the fallback is what we have presented to property owners at another time. This is, for the existing property owners on the Raymore side, the restricting the turn movements, that will not be the first time that they see that,
Right.
so.
Okay. When do you suspect you might be able to meet with them?
I'll be making a recommendation to you on getting with Belton
Okay.
tomorrow, sir.
All right. Is that something that any electeds will be involved with, or just our engineers?
Very possibly.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
Yes, sir, 2 more items.
Okay.
As we were beginning this presentation, I did hand this next group of handouts to you all, which is a recommended plan, albeit bitterly recommended, to the city council for how we're going to proceed with 58 Highway. I'll just, if you haven't had the opportunity to look through that, I'll just give you a couple seconds here to glance through. The upshoot is something has to be done on 58, and it has to be done in the near term. 58 is incredibly expensive to do. It would be staff's recommendation, and I'm going to let Mr. Krass talk for just a minute to why it is critical that we address 58 in the near term. You can see some of it in here, but if somebody is just visibly looking at 58 and they're going, well, this doesn't look as bad as my residential street looks, it's a different beast. You're comparing apples and oranges there, Mr. Krass.
So what we are finding is the pavement it's at the end of its useful life. There's a lot of traffic on that road. It's coming up on 10 years old. We're starting to see a lot of cracking. We're starting to see some alligator cracking around the cracks. You'll also notice running the same direction as the driving lanes, there's a lot of patching. There are a lot of potholes that have been patched, and my crew is out there continually chasing it. This season, and you can see it's pothole after pothole after pothole at the same location. We've patched over 200 potholes on 58 Highway so far. Takes a lot of staff time to do that, and because we'd have to have, not only do we have to have the guys with the trailers, we've got the traffic attenuator, so there's a lot of manpower there on the road that's carrying 20, 30,000 vehicles. But one of the big indicators that it's time to replace the surface is when you're out there doing a lot of pothole patching, because we're just using hot mix. We're not tearing it out. We're not putting full depth patches back in. We're just holding the road together so it's drivable, and it's just not sustainable.
And the council will remember the last time 58 Highway was in this condition and we put it off, it was almost overnight that we almost lost 58 Highway. It deteriorated that rapidly in a period of 12 months. And we're kind of at that tipping point now where we have to look at a plan. We not only have to look at a plan, but we have to look at a sustainable plan. What we had to do last time, because it jumped up and got us so quickly, was we had to add it to a bond issue. You never want to be doing a bond issue on an item, you'll remember with the trails. You don't want to be doing a bond issue on an item where we're still paying on the bonds and you've had to replace whatever you bought twice while you're still paying on the bonds. That's why I would never be recommending 58 Highway. We did that because it was an emergency situation. We lost it so fast. We don't want that to happen again. So it would be our recommendation that in the next 2 years, we suspend the local roads program entirely and put the money for the local roads into the replacement program for 58 Highway. I see no other recommendation that I can give you because of the dollar amounts that are involved. And as you can note in here, these numbers are pretty tight, and we're still down 11,400 in the first year and 35,340 in the second year. As part of the program, it would, however, you'll notice this is a 13-year program before we have to come back and do it again. In year 5, we would do the $1,200,000 microsurfacing to get us an additional 8 years on top of the original 5, just to try to get this to a 13-year program before we have to come back again. But what we would be proposing here, if it's sustainable and there's no changes in the revenue source, specifically the passage of a use tax that could be dedicated to this, every 13 years, we would have to suspend the local program and devote those monies to 58 Highway. But in the near term, I can't come up with any miracle monies for you all to do this particular program. What we would recommend, however, in conjunction with this, is that the council consider committing to every single year, and we would probably be recommending this even without this drastic action, that the council commit to 30% of available fund balance at a minimum. That's after restricted fund balance, that 30% of available fund balance be going towards local roads and curbs. As staff is recommending to you, in the case of this, in the next 2 years, we would be doing as much as that would possibly garner for us. But the reason we wanted to talk to you way ahead of the budget cycle here is this is a drastic action. And the council's going to be hearing about it because it's going to be, I can't get to your road that's in this condition that we are openly saying is in bad condition because we have to address 58 Highway. It's easier to dodge a pothole on a residential road than it is to dodge a pothole on 58 Highway from a public safety standpoint. And be happy to answer any questions that the council might have on this item.
So during the budgeting process, we naturally keep back 20% of the unreserved fund balance, correct?
We naturally keep back 20% of the total fund balance, the
Total
gross
fund
fund balance.
balance. And then for council's consideration, the unreserved fund balance is what, frankly, the last 2 years we set aside for an emergency, which came up, and we just took care of that emergency. Is there any, given that we've done fairly decent with the budgeting process, is there any way to up that from like 30 to 50% of the unreserved fund balance? I mean, we always kind of, when you give us that figure, we always kind of sit here and look at each other. If we know what we're doing with it, because it's a one-time thing, can we up the ante on that and just say it's 50%, maybe even 60% of that? Depending upon the amount, of course, but
Right.
I think it is something that we need to get our heads around.
Well, what we would be asking the council for, what I would be recommending to the council is a minimum of 30%.
Right.
Let's say we've had a very good budgeting year, we've been real conservative, and that amount is, back up in the $4 million range, then over and above the 30%, in any given year, the council can go, let's put extra dollars to that for sure.
That's true. I wouldn't want to commit this council to next year's council or whatever if it changed.
But that would certainly be, in light of this new program, would obviously be one of the first items that's going to be on staff's list, because we know the calls the council's going to
Right.
be taking, and staff, as a matter of fact, to put that back into the local roads each year.
Sure. Mr. Byrd?
Thank you. Just a clarifying question. So the 80% that we don't reserve, 30% of that or 30% of the total?
Of the available fund balance,
Okay,
which is
so
over and
about
above the
24%
restriction.
of the total. All right, thanks.
No,
Well, I mean, of the 100%, if you take away, if you got 80% times 30%, you get 24%.
don't know what our available fund balance is gonna be from any one year given to the other. He's just asking for 30%
Right.
of whatever is left over.
He
Yeah, yeah.
naturally
Right.
sets
Yeah.
back
Percent it's
20%
gonna be.
of the entire balance, not the available, right?
Yeah, available. We've seen it fluctuate. We ate it up one year with salt because we got such a heavy winter.
It's been, the available fund balance has been as low as $1.2 million and as high as $4.5 million.
Yeah.
Right now, it's at its highest point. Well, until Friday, it was at its highest point.
Right.
Now it's not.
That was 2 years of it, too. Okay.
I did have a question. Yeah. Just for knowledge, do we have a current average traffic count through the week on 58?
It's a couple years old, and if council recall, it kind of drops off as you go further east. But I would say average, probably 25,000 through the area by Price Chopper.
That's what I figured. Thank you.
Is there a way that when we do this, we can have signage or communicate with the community that, look, we're spending all of our road money here because we have to, because of the choice the community made?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. Mr. Barber?
Thank you, Your Honor. Is there, is there anything we can do as a city, as an engineering department, to conserve 58? I mean, I know we've adjusted speed limits on it. Is there truck traffic? Is there anything that we could do to preserve it, to get a little more life out of it? And I'm sure you've thought of it, and I'm just asking you, kind of your professional opinion.
Well, our first recommendation is the microsurfacing, and we've done it on Dean Avenue, we've done it on Lucy Webb. We do get criticism because the public doesn't understand what we're doing there. It's not a mill and overlay. It is a surface treatment. It fills in the cracks. It fills in some of the low areas. It keeps the moisture out of the pavement, which is in the subgrade. It also replaces, it also provides a rougher surface because on 58 right now, the aggregate's polished. So if it gets slippery, and the microsurface provides roughness, so you have traction for braking. The other thing we could do, it's hard to bid, but we could also look at implementing a crack seal program in the interim, in between where we do the overlay, and then we do a crack seal, and then we do a microsurface. Problem is there is some folks will notice the crack seal because it is left a little bit above the pavement, so you'll kind of feel it as you go over it. But all of that, keeping moisture out of the subgrade, because that's really when the potholes form. You get the moisture in the little pockets, they freeze and thaw, it breaks the pavement, and then the edges just start crumbling and they keep going. So there are some things that we could do in the interim, but the first step is looking at the microsurfacing, and then we can take a look at. It's hard to estimate the crack sealing because you bid it by the pound, and so it's hard to tell how far a pound goes given the thickness of the crack. And I'm sorry, I'm getting into the weeds, but we are looking at things there.
And that's kind of what like a parking lot, they do that to kind of keep it's the preventive maintenance type thing.
Correct.
So I think those are great ideas.
Mr. Mills, did you have something?
Well, just trying to get a clarification. When you mentioned suspending the local road program, is that just saying we're not going to do, mill and overlays and things like that? Or are you saying we're not even going to worry about potholes and things like that in the local roads? Because Mr. Fearborn had mentioned it was easier to dodge a pothole on a local road than on 58. So, I mean, even if we suspend the local program, we'd still be taking care of potholes and things like that.
Sure.
Yes, anything that our staff does now, we would continue to do.
Okay.
The maintenance budget would stay in in streets.
Yeah, our public works and staff are pretty diligent about answering complaints that are received via the complaint system and on our page. They're pretty good about that.
To Councilmember Barber's comment, were you wondering about the possibility of restricting traffic?
I don't know what I'm thinking. I'm just thinking should look at all avenues to preserve 58. Is there anything that we could do, especially now since we're really, we're kind of grabbing unknown money to keep it up right now. If we had a plan in place that we knew had a revenue stream for, it'd be a different situation. But I think we're in that preserve at all cost situation, at least till we get to a point that we have known money for it, that we
Well,
can.
that's not entirely the case, Kevin. I thought we were just diverting our regular.
We are recommending that next year, street preservation and curb replacement be suspended additionally the following year.
Yeah, and reallocated toward the 58.
Talking about the fund balance money, that's, I mean.
Right.
We have
don't
been really
know.
good with that, but that's not really, there could be a time that's not what this had been in the past,
That's
so.
correct.
And I'm just saying, I'm not saying anything as far as speed limit or reduction. Mr. Krass had some good points, just some things that we could do to kind of keep it, maintain it, PM it, whatever we need to do, and get the maximum life out of it, so.
I'm not recommending this. But one of the items that would bring the price down is if you took that program and every place where you could replace an unused left turn lane, you put a median in. And I can't believe I said that out loud. Mr. Krass has recommended that many, many times, and I have hesitated.
Well, I mean, no, that's a good point, because that eliminates a lot of linear footage of pavement that with a one-time project.
Now, several years ago, we proposed that for certain areas of the city, and the council heard from a lot of our businesses. You can put medians in, and you can, if a business goes in, you can take medians out. You have to be very judicious about how they're installed, but especially out here, there is a whole lot of 58 highway that's not actually highway. It's just a center lane sitting there.
Chicken wings.
I just bring it up, and I would encourage the council to let that stew cook. There may be a point in time when it's ready.
Okay. Well, since you've thought about it though, Mike, so what are you talking about with regard to lane yards or miles, or, I mean, are we looking at a one-lane elimination of a full mile of pavement by that, or are you, because it's going to be chopped up?
Right, but I think we can we could put a significant dent in it if you're looking at what the overlay costs will be in the future. You're looking at almost $1 million a mile to overlay the road. If council will recall, we presented you kind of an idea for that corridor through the curves from like Sunset all the way through to J, and there are a lot of there's areas where the pavement isn't used, like the residential road connections, Appaloosa, and there you could provide left turn lanes, but then all the way to Madison, there's no need for the left turn until you get to Madison. And as you go further east, west of Fox Ridge, where there's all you have is Foxwood Springs and there's no access there. You could remove a lot of the pavement and make it really nice. And the other thing is it creates a pedestrian refuge. You know, right now, it divides our city like the Grand Canyon. You've got all these nice facilities on the north side. You've got Hawk Ridge Park and all of that. But you got to drive there. There's no really good way to get there if someone wants to walk or wants to cross the street and shop. And so the center median in those areas would create a pedestrian refuge.
Food for thought. Food for thought, yeah. All right. Mr. Baker?
Just out of being more new out here, but it's referred to 58 Highway. At one point, did the state have control over that? Or, I mean, why wouldn't we name it Raymore Parkway since we're paying for it?
Everybody is laughing at me. First of all, none of us were here. In 2002, MoDOT approached, well, before that, in 1998, MoDOT approached Raymore and Belton and said, we will go in and we will completely change your 2-lane highway to this 5-lane, wonderful, what we have out there now, but you all have to take over perpetual maintenance of it. And we said, that's great, let's go. And Belton said, nope. And they still put the 5 lanes in over in Belton and here. We're saddled with it, Belton is not. And the rest is history.
Yep. Okay, so where are we at?
Hearing nothing in the alternative from the council, you will be seeing this at budget time as a presentation from your city manager on moving forward with street preservation and curb replacement, sir.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or thoughts on that? Okay.
One last item, sir.
Yep, go ahead.
I am very pleased to be able to report to the council that in a review of the Transportation and Department of Revenue fund allocations for this year down in Jefferson City, at the last minute before it passed the Senate, the governor's office fully funded the new interchange. So it did not come from the House side, it did not come from the Senate side, and I believe we can directly pat ourselves on the back for all of the attention that we drew. Spoke with the governor about it, spoke with both of our favorable highway commissioners about it. One of those highway commissioners actually approached the mayor and said, approached our county commissioner and said, stay tuned. You'll remember that we had a very pointed meeting that MoDOT attended and then drew the attention of one of our highway commissioners, who's also the municipal liaison to Raymore from Evergy, Mr. Dan Hegeman. But this interchange was a powerful point for them. We were able, again, to speak with the governor directly and talk to him about possible compromises. At that same meeting that we had with the commissioners, and you'll remember the mayor and the mayor from Belton and several other individuals actually attended the commissioners' meeting in Lee Summit and spoke with them about when the widening got cut back and what that was doing to us. That led to the other meetings that we were able to have, where we talked about the flyover as a compromise. If you're going to cut it back to the 58 highway interchange, you're creating 2 problems at the same location instead of 1. The discussion turned to the possibility of completely redoing the interchange. That led to the possibility of a partnership on that. Well, just like the interchange down at North Cass, it went from being a partnership to obviously had the governor's and the commissioner's ear, so he has fully funded it. So we don't think he's gonna veto something that he fully funded himself. We can possibly now use this, we believe, as a little bit of leverage to move forward because the flyover is at Lucy Webb is a lot cheaper. To talk with MoDOT about the fact that, hey, we talked about this partnership at the interchange. The flyover will relieve a lot of the burden there. Can we now talk about that partnership moving to the flyover and do it at the same time? Because we do know that both of the commissioners are also looking very favorable on the flyover. So if they can be putting, and they're MoDOT commissioners, so if they can be putting pressure on MoDOT and we can be putting pressure on Mark for the possibility of a triple partnership on that, then we may be seeing both the interchange and the flyover closer to the near term than we thought. So very good news.
Yes, Sonia?
Is that including 3 lanes to North Cass, or is that not part of that anymore?
No, the North Cass, we have gotten MoDOT to commit as part of the compromise. We've got them to commit to at least coming up with a hard date for that.
They pushed it out.
So the work there isn't over yet, but we're not going to complain about the governor handing us $20 million. And that's a certainty. They can't pull it back saying it's a funding issue because the governor is giving MoDOT the money to do this, so.
Okay.
Just a line of sight question. So theoretically, we could see the bridge at 58, the interchange.
Sorry, the bridge at 58, the interchange under construction before we even get the widening of the highway, which was the original first project.
I think they're going to do them at the exact same time.
Okay, I see.
The nice part about the interchange being done is, I think I told the council that almost immediately out of the chute, they had cut back even the widening project. It was originally supposed to go under 58, and they had cut it back to the entrance ramp. And that was because 58 in its existing form couldn't support that. So our hope is that now the widening at least goes down to the on-ramp onto 49 going south.
We also have a meeting with MoDOT staff on the 29th, and so the flavor of that, I think, is going to change. I don't know if MoDOT's aware of the money yet, but that was more of just a kind of a status meeting to hold their feet, accountability, what is the status thing. So it's the same, going to be the same group, or most of the same group that we had with the meeting to discuss the I-49 widening, if you recall, with the stakeholders, sir. And so that is happening on the 29th, so we'll be able to get a little more of a schedule from them for the design of this and how all of these different elements are going to work together.
Mike, do you know, I saw in the National League of Cities newsletter they sent out last week that Belton was one of the infrastructure recipients, and it was $200,000 for one project, but it was $60 million for another project, but it doesn't say what the project is for the city of Belton. Do you know what that was, Jim? I think I forwarded you the email.
The 60 million, I believe, is contingent on the railroad deal that they are trying to work on the west side.
Oh, okay. It has nothing to do
And the
with 49.
200,000 was North Scott.
Okay, so nothing to do with 49?
No.
Either project, okay. Right. Darn. All right, anybody else have anything? Does anybody have any other item to bring up at this point? If there's nothing else, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you.